Husband dumped his pregnant wife over medical costs. Unaware, her father left her a $50 million fortune. He dumped his wife out when the bills for her pregnancy complications piled too high, calling her useless and unworthy of his name. Then walked back inside arm in arm with Vanessa, the nurse who once smiled sweetly at Sarah's hospital bedside. He never knew Sarah carried a hidden inheritance that could change generations. "You're nothing but a burden, Sarah. A sick woman draining me dry. Pack your things and leave. I refuse to waste my life on debt." Those were the venomous words Michael Benson spat as his pregnant wife stood trembling, clutching her ultrasound photo, her body frail from the strain of carrying his child. Instead of standing by her, he abandoned her. Instead of love, he delivered humiliation and rejection in the hour she needed him most. He believed she was finished. But what he never imagined was that the same woman he cast aside as worthless would rise with a power beyond his reach. A rise that would expose his betrayal, shatter his pride, and bring him to his knees. Sometimes the debts you despise become the very chains that bind you. Sometimes the woman you call worthless becomes the light that blinds your arrogance. This is not just another story of betrayal. It is the cry of a wife despised in her weakest moment, the scars of humiliation turned into strength, and the warning the world too often forgets. Never despise the broken, for they may rise higher than you could ever dream. Dear viewers, thank you for watching. As we step into this story, I ask from my heart, don't just hear Sarah's pain and scroll away. Subscribe now, and in the comments share where you're watching from. So Sarah, and every woman betrayed, knows she is not alone. The hospital lobby was never silent, but on this day, every sound faded beneath the thunder of Michael Benson's voice. "You're draining me, Sarah. Every week it's another bill." His tall frame shook with rage as he waved a bundle of invoices high in the air, as if each paper was proof of his suffering. His deep voice echoed through the white-walled corridor, making every patient, nurse, and visitor pause to stare. Sarah Benson, his pregnant wife, sat quietly on the hard bench, her head bowed, her belly heavy with the weight of new life. Her face was pale, her body weak from repeated hospital visits. She pressed one trembling hand against her swollen stomach, as if shielding her unborn child from her husband's words. The other hand clutched the ultrasound photo she carried everywhere. A tiny black and white image of the baby she had prayed for, the baby she had longed to give Michael as proof of her devotion. "Michael," she whispered softly, almost apologetically, "please, don't be angry. The doctor said the baby needs these treatments." "It's not just me. It's for our child." But instead of easing his anger, her gentleness fueled it. Michael turned sharply, his eyes hard as stone. "Don't you dare make excuses, Sarah. A strong wife would find a way to make this work without drowning me in debt. You're weak. You've always been weak." Sarah's heart clenched, but she did not fight back. She had married Michael with hope, with love, with a quiet devotion that made her endure more than most women would. She cooked for him when he worked late. She prayed for his business deals. She had even hidden her morning sickness in the early months of pregnancy so he would not worry. Her whole life was wrapped around him, and even now as he shouted, part of her wanted to reach for his hand and remind him of the man he used to be. But Michael had already turned his back on that part of himself. From the side, Vanessa Clark, the nurse assigned to Sarah's care, stepped closer. Her crisp uniform was spotless, her tone soothing, but her eyes carried a dangerous gleam. "Mr. Benson," she said sweetly, resting her hand on his sleeve, "don't be too hard on yourself. Some women just can't handle pregnancy. Maybe Sarah is too fragile." Michael's chest heaved as he looked down at Vanessa. Her words dripped like oil on fire. He gave a bitter laugh. "Fragile? That's exactly it. She's bleeding me dry because she can't even do the one thing a wife is supposed to do." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but her voice locked in her throat. Across the lobby, Karen Lewis, their neighbor, leaned toward another woman and whispered loudly enough for others to hear. "See? I told you. Sarah's a burden. Poor Michael deserves a woman who adds, not drains." The whispers spread, circling Sarah like wolves. Her hands trembled as she pulled open her worn purse. She dug out every last bill she had, crumpled, torn, Barely $400. With eyes lowered, she held the money out to the hospital clerk. Please, she begged softly, take this for now. I'll find the rest somehow. Just don't stop my treatment. My baby needs it. The clerk, cold and impatient, barely looked at her. Mrs. Benson, this doesn't even cover half the bill. Before Sarah could plead again, Michael snatched the money from her hand. His lips curled in disgust. He threw the bills back into her lap so hard that they scattered onto the floor. Pathetic. You want to beg like a street woman? You shame me in front of everyone. Gasps filled the room. Sarah bent quickly, gathering the bills with shaking fingers. The ultrasound photo slipped from her lap and fluttered to the ground. She picked it up gently, pressing it to her chest as if it were the last piece of her dignity. Dr. Samuel Wilson, the kind obstetrician who had guided her through every complication, rushed from his office, his face etched with anger. Mr. Benson, he said firmly, you cannot abandon your wife at this stage. She needs rest, medication, and stability. Do you understand the risks? You are putting both mother and child in danger. Michael jabbed a finger at him. Stay out of my business, doctor. You don't care about my wife. You care about your paycheck. You're just another leech feeding on me. Sarah's tears slipped down her cheeks, but even in her humiliation, she whispered, Michael, please, don't say that. He's trying to help us. Her quiet devotion pierced deeper than her tears. Even as he tore her apart, she still defended him. She still saw him as her husband, still believed marriage meant endurance. But Michael only scoffed, as if her loyalty was another weakness. The stress became unbearable. Sarah's chest tightened. Her belly contracted painfully. She cried out and collapsed onto the cold hospital floor, clutching her stomach. Chaos erupted. The clerk screamed for help. Nurses rushed forward. Dr. Wilson dropped to his knees beside her. Vanessa froze, torn between duty and her quiet loyalty to Michael. And Michael, the man she had loved and devoted herself to, turned away. He muttered, I'm done with this mess, and stormed toward the sliding doors. The crowd's whispers grew louder, heavy with judgment. Some pitied Sarah. Others praised Michael for freeing himself. On the floor, Sarah gasped for air, clutching the ultrasound photo against her chest. Her tears dripped onto the picture as she whispered to her unborn child, Don't leave me, please. I will protect you. I promise. The stretcher lifted her, carrying her away from the lobby's cruel eyes. Her gaze lingered on Michael's back as it disappeared through the exit. Vanessa walking close behind him like a shadow. And in that moment, amid pain and betrayal, something changed inside her. A fragile seed of anger, small but alive, rooted itself in her trembling heart. Sarah is wheeled away, clutching the ultrasound photo as if it were her last shield. The camera freezes on Michael leaving with Vanessa. The coldness of the hospital was only the beginning. When Sarah returns home, she will discover her own mansion has become a battlefield of betrayal. The front door of the Benson mansion slammed so hard it shook the glass panes. Michael Benson stormed inside, his jaw tight, his phone buzzing with new messages. Behind him, Vanessa Clark, the nurse who had stood too close at the hospital, slipped off her white coat and smiled as if she already belonged there. Finally, Michael muttered, throwing the hospital invoices onto the marble floor. That woman will destroy me if I keep letting her. Before Sarah could even return from the ambulance ride, her place in her husband's home was being poisoned. Margaret Benson, Michael's mother, descended the staircase in a silk robe. A woman in her late 60s with sharp cheekbones and sharper words, she had never approved of Sarah. To Margaret, wealth and power defined worth. She folded her arms and raised an eyebrow. Well, did you finally come to your senses? Margaret asked coldly. I warned you. That girl is weak. All she brings is sickness and debt. You deserve a woman who adds to your life, not one who drains it. Michael sighed, sinking into the couch. She nearly fainted again today, Mother. Another bill, another scene. I can't keep doing this. Vanessa slipped closer, setting a glass of water on the table for him with an affectionate smile. You don't have to, Michael. You need peace. You need a partner who lifts you, not one who drags you down. Her voice was sweet, her presence too comfortable for someone who was supposed to be just a nurse. Michael glanced at her, his breathing slowing, as if her words soothed him. Margaret's eyes lit up with approval. See, Michael? Vanessa understands. She stands tall where Sarah falls. A woman like her would make this house shine again. The weight of their voices pressed against him, feeding his frustration. Meanwhile, Sarah's taxi pulled up outside. She stepped out slowly, still weak from the hospital incident. Her hands clutched her ultrasound photo, her heart clinging to hope that home would bring comfort. She whispered to herself, "Michael will calm down. He always does. He loves me. He has to love me." But the moment she stepped through the door, the air turned to ice. Michael didn't rise to help her. He didn't even look at her swollen belly. Instead, his mother's sharp laugh cut the silence. "Oh, look who crawled back. Still alive, are we?" Sarah froze in the doorway, her lips trembling. Her eyes darted to Michael, silently begging for warmth, for the husband she remembered. But Michael only rubbed his forehead, avoiding her gaze. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice dripping with false kindness. "Sarah, you should rest. This stress isn't good for the baby." The way she emphasized the baby made Sarah feel like an outsider in her own home. Sarah swallowed back tears. She wanted to tell Michael about her devotion, about the way she prayed for him, about how she saved every penny for his dreams. But the words stuck. She stood silently, her heart cracking, as Michael finally looked at her and said coldly, "I can't do this anymore, Sarah. You're a weight I can't carry." The words hung in the air like a knife. Sarah's fingers tightened around the ultrasound photo. Her lips parted, but no sound came. And then Margaret clapped her hands once, smiling cruelly. "Then it's decided. The sooner she leaves, the sooner your life begins again." Sarah's world tilted. She staggered back a step, clutching her belly as if to hold herself together. The man she loved, the family she had served, the home she had built, all turning against her. Sarah's back hit the door frame as Margaret's words echoed in her ears. Michael looked at her with empty eyes, Vanessa standing too close at his side. The mansion no longer felt like home. It felt like exile. And soon the humiliation wouldn't stay inside those walls. Michael's decision would spill into the open air, turning into a public scene no one could ignore. The heavy mansion gates creaked open, and Sarah Benson stumbled forward, her suitcase dragging across the gravel. Her swollen belly strained against her faded dress, her breath short from the weight of it all. Behind her, Michael Benson's voice thundered like a gavel. "Get out of my house, Sarah! You're nothing but debt and shame." Neighbors froze in their yards, children stopped mid-play, and even passing drivers slowed their cars. The Benson mansion, once admired for its wealth, now became the stage for humiliation. Margaret Benson, Michael's mother, stood proudly at the doorway in her silk robe, clapping her hands with cruel delight. "Yes, Michael, end this farce once and for all. She's not worthy of this family name." Beside Michael, Vanessa Clark leaned against the gate, her nurse's uniform replaced with a fitted dress. She smirked at Sarah, her voice laced with venom. "Maybe you should find a place you belong, Sarah. This house was too big for you anyway." Sarah's fingers trembled around the suitcase handle. She looked at Michael, her eyes wet and pleading. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Michael, this is our child, our home. Please don't do this in front of everyone." But Michael only grew louder, shoving a stack of hospital bills into her hands so forcefully they fluttered to the ground. "You've drained me long enough. You're not my wife anymore. I want nothing to do with you or your sickness." The papers scattered across the driveway, mixing with the dust. Among them slipped Sarah's ultrasound photo, the small image of her unborn child lying exposed to the public gaze. Karen Lewis, the neighbor who thrived on gossip, hurried closer with two other women. She pointed at Sarah and said loudly, "I warned you all. She was nothing but a burden. Look how he's finally throwing her out. Poor Michael deserves better." The women nodded, whispering like crows circling over prey. Sarah bent slowly, her body aching as she gathered the scattered papers. Each bill felt like a weight of shame, each whisper a dagger. She cradled the ultrasound photo against her chest once more, whispering to herself, "I'll protect you. I'll find a way." For a moment, the crowd's laughter and whispers blurred into silence in her ears. All she could feel was the small heartbeat inside her. the only thing keeping her upright. But the silence shattered when Michael seized her suitcase and hurled it through the open gate. It landed with a sickening thud on the gravel, the latch breaking, her clothes spilling out for all to see. "Don't ever step foot here again," Michael roared, pointing at her with the same hand that once held her on their wedding day. Gas spread through the onlookers. Sarah staggered back, tears running freely, her body shaking from both weakness and grief. Her home, her marriage, her dignity, all torn away in one public strike. Vanessa slipped her arm into Michael's, parading like a new bride. Margaret clapped again. Karen whispered gleefully, and Sarah, clutching her photo and suitcase, felt the world close in on her. As Sarah stumbled into the street, her suitcase broken and her baby stirring within her, her knees gave way. She collapsed onto the dusty roadside. A car screeched to a halt nearby, and a stranger rushed toward her shouting, "Ma'am, are you all right?" It would not be Michael, nor Vanessa, nor Margaret who lifted her that day, but a stranger's compassion that would open a new path in her darkest hour. Sarah Benson's body hit the dusty roadside hard. Her suitcase lay open beside her, clothes spilling across the ground as the whispers of neighbors echoed in her ears. Her breath came in sharp, broken gasps, and her hands instinctively wrapped around her swollen belly. "Please, not now," she whispered to the tiny life inside her. A car screeched to a halt nearby. A man jumped out, a taxi driver in his 40s, his shirt worn from long hours, his face lined with years of labor, but softened by compassion. His name was Henry Cole, though most people simply called him Mr. Cole. He rushed forward, kneeling beside her. "Madam, are you all right?" he asked urgently, brushing dust from her shoulder. "I saw him throw you out. With child in your belly? God forbid!" His voice cracked with outrage. Sarah tried to sit up, but her strength failed. She clutched her ultrasound photo, whispering, I just need somewhere safe." Henry's eyes softened. "Don't worry. I won't leave you here." He gently gathered her scattered clothes back into the suitcase, then waved down another passerby. "Help me lift her." Together, they raised Sarah to her feet and guided her into the back seat of Henry's taxi. The leather seats were torn, the air faintly smelled of fuel, but to Sarah it felt like the arms of mercy. As the car pulled away, she glanced back through the window. At the mansion gate, she saw Michael standing proudly with Vanessa at his side, his mother Margaret smirking beside them. Their figures grew smaller until they disappeared completely. Tears slid down Sarah's face. She had loved Michael with everything she had. She had endured the pain, the shame, the crushing bills, all because she believed marriage meant devotion. And now, cast out into the street, she realized she had given her heart to a man who valued wealth more than love. Her voice shook as she whispered to herself, "I'll protect you, my child, even if I must walk alone." Henry glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Don't cry, madam. I know someone who can help. She's a midwife, a good woman. She has nothing fancy, but her heart is pure. She won't turn you away." Sarah's lips trembled. "Why would she help me? She doesn't even know me." Henry's voice was steady. "Because some people don't need to know you to show kindness. Sometimes strangers carry the hands of angels." The taxi finally turned off the main road and into a modest street lined with small weathered houses. Henry stopped before a tiny yellow-painted home with flower pots on the steps. The door opened, and a woman in her late 40s stepped out, wiping her hands on an apron. She was Harriet Cole, Henry's sister, a midwife who had spent her life helping women in need. "Henry," Harriet called, her brow furrowed. "Who have you brought?" Henry climbed out quickly. "A mother who needs shelter. Her husband threw her out like garbage. Please, Harriet, she needs you." Harriet's eyes landed on Sarah, pale and trembling in the back seat. Without hesitation, she rushed forward, her voice warm yet firm. "Come inside, dear. You and your baby are safe here." Sarah's tears spilled over. She wanted to believe those words, but trust came hard after betrayal. Still, her body was too weak to resist. She let Harriet guide her gently toward the little house. As Harriet closed the door behind them, shutting out the world's cruelty, Sarah whispered one final time to her unborn child. "We're safe, aren't we?" But outside, unseen by her, Karen Lewis lingered in the shadows, whispering to another neighbor. Wait till everyone hears about this. She's hiding in a midwife's house now. Sarah might have found shelter, but gossip spreads faster than mercy, and soon the whispers of her new life would test her fragile hope. The moment Sarah crossed the threshold of Harriet Cole's small yellow-painted house, her body gave out. She collapsed against the wooden frame, clutching her belly as a sharp pain tore through her. "Henry, quick!" Harriet cried, rushing forward with surprising strength. Together, brother and sister lifted Sarah onto a modest sofa covered in handmade quilts. Harriet's hands worked fast, checking her pulse, touching her forehead. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed urgency. "She's weak, too weak, and the stress is breaking her." Sarah gasped, her tears spilling freely. I can't lose my baby." Harriet cupped her face, her touch gentle but firm. "You won't, dear. Not while you're under my roof. You're safe here." The room fell into quieter rhythms. Harriet brought a basin of water, bathing Sarah's face with a mother's tenderness. Henry returned with a cup of tea, his expression softened by the sight of her fragile state. Slowly, Sarah's breathing steadied. Her trembling hand reached into her bag and pulled out the ultrasound photo. She pressed it against her chest, whispering, "You're all I have left." Harriet sat beside her, her voice calm but filled with empathy. "I've helped many women through births, Sarah. Some abandoned, some with no money, some left to die. But you," she touched Sarah's belly gently, "you will not walk this road alone." For the first time since being thrown out, Sarah felt a flicker of fragile hope. Her devotion to Michael, her years of sacrifice, her humiliation at the mansion gate, all seemed far behind in this small, humble home. Just then, the door creaked open. A young woman, no more than 21, stepped inside holding a basket of bread. She had bright eyes, a kind smile, and a nervous energy that filled the room. Harriet looked up. "Ah, Sarah, this is Anna Blake," Harriet explained. "She's a law student who helps me with errands. She's young, but her heart is bigger than most I've met." Anna's eyes widened as she saw Sarah's pale face. "Oh no! What happened?" Harriet's voice hardened. "Her husband abandoned her while carrying his child." Anna gasped, setting down the basket. She knelt beside Sarah, taking her hand. "I don't know your story yet, but I know this. You are stronger than you feel right now, and I'll stand by you." Sarah's lips quivered. She had lost her husband, her home, her dignity, and yet here, in the shelter of strangers, she found comfort she had never expected. As night fell, Sarah whispered to her unborn child, "We will survive. I'll protect you, no matter what." Her voice was thin, but inside it carried a new thread of steel. But just as peace began to settle, a knock rattled the door so violently that Sarah jumped. Henry frowned, moving toward it. Harriet's face tightened. On the other side, a shadow lingered. A familiar voice called out with sharp authority, "Is Sarah Benson here? I need to speak with her immediately." The knock echoed through the tiny house like thunder. Sarah's heart pounded as she clutched her belly tighter. Who had found her so soon? What waits on the other side of that door is not cruelty this time, but a message from her late father. A letter that will turn despair into destiny. The pounding at the door grew louder. Harriet froze, her hand on Sarah's shoulder. "Stay here," she whispered. Henry squared his shoulders, stepping to the door. When it swung open, a woman in a black suit stood tall against the night, a leather briefcase in hand. Her voice rang with sharp authority. "I'm Clara Reed, attorney for the late Martin Gray. I've been searching for Sarah Benson." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her father, Uncle Martin Gray, her late father in all but name, had been gone for months, yet hearing his name felt like a bell tolling across her soul. Harriet guided Clara in. "You've found her, but mind your tone. She's with child and fragile." Clara's eyes softened as they fell on Sarah, who sat trembling on the sofa, clutching her ultrasound photo. She knelt slightly, her voice gentler. "Mrs. Benson, your father left behind something important, a sealed letter addressed only to you. It has conditions, but also a future." Sarah's lips parted, her voice a whisper. "For me? My father thought of me?" Clara placed the sealed envelope into Sarah's trembling hands. The thick paper was edged with gold, the handwriting instantly recognizable. Sarah's fingers traced the letters of her name, Sarah Benson, written by the man who had raised her with quiet dignity. Tears blurred her eyes as she broke the seal. Her voice shook as she read aloud. My dearest daughter, if you are reading this, then I am gone. I feared the day would come when you might be cast aside by those who should love you. Should that day arrive, know this. You are not poor, Sarah. You are not weak. You are the heiress to the fortune I built with my life. $50 million will be released to you, but only when you stand on your own, without your husband's name or shadow. Sarah gasped, the paper slipping in her hand. 50 million? Her mind spun. She had begged for $400 just days ago, humiliated in front of strangers. And now, a fortune beyond imagination sat within her grasp, sealed by her father's love. Clara nodded. Your father wanted to protect you from leeches, especially your husband. That's why it must remain secret. The inheritance cannot be touched until you claim independence. Harriet's eyes glistened as she held Sarah's hand. Do you see, child? God has not forgotten you. Your father prepared this day long before your husband betrayed you. Sarah wept silently. She remembered her devotion to Michael, the years of loyalty, the humiliation at the mansion gates. And yet her father had seen what she could not, that one day she would need the strength to rise alone. Anna Blake, the young law student, leaned forward, her eyes wide with admiration. Mrs. Benson, this is more than money. It's power to rewrite your story. Don't let him, or anyone, steal it. Sarah clutched the letter to her chest. Father, I'll make you proud. I'll protect this child, and I'll stand tall again. But Clara's voice cut through the fragile peace. There is one danger. If Michael learns about this inheritance, he'll stop at nothing to take it. We must keep it hidden. Do you understand? Sarah nodded, her heart pounding. A knock rattled the window pane. Everyone turned sharply. Outside, a shadowy figure lingered in the dark, watching the house. The secret of Sarah's inheritance must remain hidden, but greed is never far away. And already a cousin with hungry eyes is drawing closer. The window rattled again. This time the shadow outside pressed closer, the outline of a man's face flashing beneath the street lamp. Anna Blake gasped. Someone's listening. Henry stormed to the door, flinging it open with force. A thin man stumbled backward, caught in the act. His sharp nose, sunken cheeks, and greedy eyes gave him away instantly. Sarah froze. Peter Collins, she whispered. Peter was her cousin, a distant relative who had always hovered at family gatherings like a vulture, sniffing for scraps of wealth. Though they shared blood, he had never cared for Sarah, only for the fortune her father once commanded. Peter, Harriet snapped, stepping forward. What are you doing skulking around this house like a thief? Peter's lips curled into a sly grin. Thief? No. Family. His eyes flicked toward the sealed letter clutched against Sarah's chest. Word travels fast, cousin. Uncle Martin's little treasure. Is it true? Clara Reed, the lawyer, stepped sharply in front of Sarah, her voice like steel. This inheritance is none of your concern. It belongs solely to Sarah, and by law, no one else has a claim. Peter smirked, circling like a wolf. Law, yes. But tell me, how long before Michael finds out? You think you can hide a $50 million? Money that size has wings. It will fly into the wrong hands. Sarah's heart pounded. She held the letter tighter, her voice trembling. You won't take this from me, Peter. This is all I have left of my father's love. Leave. Clara raised her chin. If you know what's good for you, walk away. I've already filed motions to secure the funds under strict confidentiality. Not even Michael Benson will sniff a cent without Sarah's consent. For once, Peter's grin faltered. Clara's confidence unnerved him, but his greedy eyes still lingered. We'll see, he muttered before slinking into the night. The door slammed shut, and the room fell into silence. Sarah collapsed back onto the sofa, clutching her belly. Even my own blood would rob me if he could. Harriet sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Listen to me, Sarah. The world may be filled with wolves, but your father gave you more than money. He gave you a shield. Use it wisely. Anna nodded, her youthful face bright with determination. And you're not alone? We'll protect you. All of us. I may just be a law student, but I'll fight beside you." Sarah looked at each of them. Harriet with her motherly strength, Henry with his steady hands, Anna with her fierce loyalty, Clara with her sharp legal mind. For the first time since her exile, she felt something stronger than despair, the roots of a new family forming around her. She touched her belly gently and whispered, "This child will be born into dignity. Father, I will not waste the gift you left me." But before peace could settle, Clara's phone buzzed sharply, her face drained of color as she read the message. "It's Michael," she whispered. "He's already filed for divorce, and he's boasting about a new wife in public." Sarah's fingers tightened around the inheritance letter until her knuckles turned white. Divorce papers. Betrayal made official. The final tie was being severed, and while Sarah began to rebuild quietly in Harriet's home, Michael's arrogance would soon grow louder, flaunting Vanessa as his pride. A parade of betrayal Sarah would one day confront with strength. The divorce notice hit the wooden table with a slap. Sarah flinched, staring at the bold black letters at the top. Petition for divorce. Michael Benson versus Sarah Benson. Anna Blake snatched it up and read quickly, her voice trembling with anger. He didn't even wait. He's boasting publicly with Vanessa as if she's already his wife. Sarah's chest tightened, the words cutting deeper than knives. She pressed her palm over her swollen belly. The child inside kicked softly, as if reminding her to endure. Harriet Cole, steady as ever, tore the papers from Anna's hands and shoved them into a drawer. "Enough! That man has taken too much from her already. We won't let his shadow poison this house." Sarah's tears spilled silently. She thought of the vows she had once spoken, the meals she cooked late into the night, the prayers whispered for his success. And now he cast her away like broken glass. Yet in her sorrow she whispered to her child, "I will not let you inherit my pain. I will fight to give you more." The following days at Harriet's home became a rhythm of survival. Sarah rose early, though her body was weak, and helped Harriet in the small clinic attached to the house. Women from the neighborhood came for advice, some poor, some abandoned, some in fear. Sarah saw her own reflection in their eyes. One afternoon, as she helped a young mother cradle her newborn, Dr. Samuel Wilson arrived. The same doctor who had defended her at the hospital now stepped into Harriet's clinic with quiet strength. He checked Sarah's vitals, nodding with approval. "You're stronger than when I last saw you," he said gently. "Don't lose hope. You're not just a patient. You're a mother with a future." Sarah's lips trembled. "But what if I fail? I have nothing." Dr. Wilson shook his head. "You have everything. Your child, the inheritance your father left, and people who care. Sometimes that's all a person needs to rebuild." Anna, sitting nearby with her law books, added softly, "And you have us. Harriet, Henry, Clara, me. We'll fight beside you." Sarah looked around the small clinic, the wooden benches, the soft cries of babies, the mothers who leaned on Harriet's wisdom. It was nothing like the mansion's marble halls, but somehow it felt more like home. She touched her belly and whispered, "This child will be born into dignity. I swear it." For a moment, peace settled in the room. A fragile hope began to grow roots in Sarah's heart. But peace shattered quickly. Harriet's neighbor, a boy delivering herbs, rushed in breathless. "Mrs. Cole, it's on the street. Mr. Benson parading with his new woman. He's shouting that Sarah was useless, that he has a wife who brings him peace now." The room went still, Sarah's face drained of color. Through the open window, Sarah heard the distant echo of Michael's laughter, Vanessa's giggle at his side, and the cruel whispers of neighbors cheering his pride. Her hand tightened around the ultrasound photo. Michael's arrogance had only begun to roar, but his empire would soon be touched by betrayal greater than Sarah's. The sound of loud music blasted down the street before anyone even saw him. A sleek black SUV pulled up outside the Benson mansion, its tinted windows rolling down to reveal Michael Benson with his arm around Vanessa Clark. He leaned out proudly, shouting for all to hear, "Look at my real wife, the woman who gives me peace, not a weakling like Sarah." Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd that quickly gathered. Children stopped their games. Men shook their heads. Women covered their mouths, half in shock, half in curiosity. Margaret Benson, Michael's mother, stepped out onto the porch, clapping her hands proudly. Yes, son, this is the life you deserve. Wealth, beauty, strength, not a sick woman draining your pockets. Vanessa smirked, resting her manicured hand on Michael's chest. Her voice dripped with pride. Michael, they should see how happy you are now. No more debts, no more burdens, just freedom. From Harriet's small house across town, Sarah heard the echoes of gossip before the news even reached her ears. Karen Lewis, the neighbor who thrived on rumors, barged into Harriet's yard with another woman at her side. They're celebrating openly, Karen cried with glee. Michael says Sarah was nothing but dead weight. He calls Vanessa his salvation. Everyone's talking. Sarah stood frozen, the bread she had been slicing slipping from her hand. Her face paled, her heart aching. She whispered faintly, he calls her his wife? Anna Blake stepped forward quickly, her eyes flashing with anger. Don't listen to her poison, Sarah. He's flaunting lies. He wants to humiliate you. Harriet steadied Sarah by the shoulders. Child, lift your head. His arrogance is his curse. Let him shout. Let him mock. Pride comes before the fall. But Sarah's tears flowed freely. She had once loved Michael with all her heart. She had prayed for him, stood by him, even endured the shame of hospital debts to give him a child. And now he laughed in public with another woman by his side, treating their vows like ashes. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Trevor Miles, Michael's longtime business partner, approached the couple, his smile forced but sharp. Michael, maybe you should tone it down. Your investors don't like scandals. Michael waved him off. Let them talk. I built this empire with my hands. No woman, no investor, no rumor can touch me. Vanessa kissed his cheek, fueling his ego. That's right, Michael. Together, we'll rise higher than ever. The crowd murmured, some clapping, others shaking their heads. Pride blazed in Michael's eyes, blinding him to the shadows forming behind his empire. Back at Harriet's house, Sarah sat silently, her tears falling onto the ultrasound photo in her hands. Outside, the same SUV roared past, Michael's laughter echoing. But hidden in the shadows across the street, Victor Stone, a rival businessman with cold eyes, watched Vanessa and Michael with interest, already plotting their downfall. Michael's arrogance would blind him to Vanessa's schemes and Victor's cunning. The empire he flaunted today would soon begin to crumble from within. The crystal glass shattered against the floor. Michael Benson's roar filled the luxurious dining room of his mansion. Those investors are cowards. They're threatening to pull out. Let them go. I don't need them. He stood at the head of the table, face red with rage, suit jacket tossed carelessly aside. Vanessa Clark leaned back in her chair, swirling wine lazily in her glass, her lips curling into a sly smile. You're too angry, Michael, she purred. Anger blinds men. But lucky for you, I know someone who can help us. Michael shot her a glare. Help us? Or help himself? The dining room door opened without a knock. A tall man in a tailored charcoal suit walked in, his presence cold and commanding. His eyes were sharp, his movements deliberate. The kind of man who weighed every opportunity like a blade. This was Victor Stone, Michael's longtime rival in both business and reputation. Where Michael boasted loudly, Victor was quiet and cunning. Where Michael relied on arrogance, Victor relied on patience. Vanessa rose gracefully, greeting him with a kiss on the cheek that was just a little too intimate for Michael's liking. Michael, she said sweetly, meet Victor. He's been watching your empire with interest. He believes he can save you. Michael's fist clenched. I don't need saving. I'm stronger than ever. Victor's lips curved into a thin smile. Is that so? Then why are your contracts slipping into my hands one by one? You're bleeding investors, Benson. Keep shouting, and soon you'll be shouting into an empty hall. Michael lunged forward, his pride burning hotter than reason. You won't take what's mine. Vanessa stepped between them, pressing her palm against Michael's chest. Calm down, love. This isn't a fight. It's an opportunity. Her eyes flicked back to Victor with an unspoken promise. Michael, blinded by ego and Vanessa's touch, finally sat, breathing heavily. Fine. What do you propose? Victor leaned closer, his voice smooth and dangerous. A partnership. You let me guide the contracts. Vanessa plays her part in smoothing negotiations. Together we expand. But if you keep roaring like a fool, Benson, your empire will collapse in a month. Michael slammed the table, but his silence betrayed his fear. Vanessa's hand slid over his, her voice low and reassuring. Trust me, Michael, with Victor's help, we'll rise higher than Sarah ever dreamed. She'll see what she lost. Michael's jaw tightened. Pride won again. Fine, but this is my empire. Don't forget that. Victor's cold smile widened as he extended his hand. Of course, your empire. His eyes, however, flickered toward Vanessa, and she smiled back knowingly. Michael clasped Victor's hand, not realizing he had just placed his fate into the grip of his enemy. As the deal was sealed, Vanessa excused herself to fetch more wine. In the hallway, her phone buzzed. She answered quickly, her voice dropping to a whisper. Yes, Anthony. He's taking the bait. Soon, Michael will have nothing left. Michael thought Vanessa was his salvation, but the same woman who warmed his bed was already planning the fire that would burn down his empire. The knock on Harriet Cole's door rattled the quiet house. It was late, the street already dark, and Sarah Benson sat cradling her belly by the lamp's glow. Harriet froze mid-stitch. Anna Blake lifted her eyes from her law notes, and Henry frowned, rising cautiously. When the door creaked open, the last person Sarah expected stood there. Michael Benson. Sarah, he said softly, his voice stripped of its usual roar. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, his face drawn. He stepped inside uninvited, his eyes darting nervously around the humble room. Sarah's breath caught. Her fingers tightened around the ultrasound photo in her lap. Harriet's lips thinned, her protective instincts rising. Anna stood quickly, blocking his path. You've no right to be here, Anna snapped, her young voice sharp with courage. Michael raised his hands, feigning innocence. I only came to see Sarah and the baby. Sarah's heart wavered. For a fleeting second, she remembered the man she had once prayed for, the husband she had devoted herself to. But then came the memories of the hospital lobby, of the mansion gate, of Vanessa's hand looped proudly through his arm. Her voice was cold. What do you want, Michael? He sighed dramatically, dropping onto Harriet's chair as if exhaustion weighed him down. Things are difficult. Investors are turning on me. My mother is restless. Vanessa is not as understanding as I hoped. He looked at Sarah, his eyes pleading. I came to check on the baby. Our baby. Sarah's lips trembled, but her eyes remained hard. You mean the child you abandoned the day you threw me into the street? Michael flinched. He shifted in his seat, then leaned forward, lowering his voice. I made mistakes. Maybe we can fix things. For the child's sake. Harriet stepped forward, her voice firm. Don't you dare. You left her to die. You cannot waltz in now with empty words. Michael's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile toward Sarah. I can provide again, Sarah. I can make it right. Just let me back. Sarah shook her head slowly. The timid wife who once defended him had begun to fade. Her voice carried new strength. This baby doesn't need you. I don't need you. You didn't come for me. You came because your world is falling apart. The room fell silent. Michael's mask cracked, anger flashing in his eyes before he quickly covered it. Think carefully, Sarah. Life outside my house is hard. Without me, you'll suffer. Anna stepped closer, her voice steady. She already suffered with you. Michael's face darkened, but Harriet planted herself firmly between him and Sarah. Leave, now. For a long moment, Michael's pride wrestled with his desperation. Finally, he stood, smoothing his jacket. He leaned closer to Sarah, his whisper venomous. Don't be so sure you've seen the last of me. He slammed the door behind him, the sound echoing through the tiny house like thunder. Sarah sat frozen, her tears glistening in the lamplight. Her heart pounded, but instead of breaking, it burned with resolve. Outside, Michael's shadow lingered briefly before vanishing into the night, leaving behind the certainty that he would strike again. And soon Michael's empire would be shaken, not by Sarah's hands, but by the truth uncovered in ledgers and contracts he thought no one would ever see. The conference room echoed with the slam of a thick folder on the polished oak table. Marcus Hale, a seasoned forensic accountant with sharp eyes and a reputation for uncovering hidden fraud, stared down at the pile of documents. His voice was low but firm. Michael Benson's empire is bleeding, and it's not just mismanagement, it's fraud. Around the table, investors exchanged worried looks. At Marcus's side sat Mia Foster, his young intern, eager but nervous. She pushed her glasses up her nose and added softly, "The numbers don't add up. Payments routed through shell companies, inflated invoices, missing funds. If we dig deeper, this whole empire collapses." One of the senior investors frowned. "Are you certain, Marcus? Benson is powerful. If we move against him, and you're wrong..." Marcus cut him off, slapping another file open. "Wrong? Look at this. Insurance scams tied to medical supplies. Contracts redirected into personal accounts. He's been draining his own company for years to fuel his lifestyle." The room fell silent. The truth had been spoken. Meanwhile, across town, Sarah sat quietly at Harriet Cole's table, sipping warm tea. Clara Reed, the lawyer, had come again to check on her. She placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "The world has begun to turn, Sarah. Michael's mask is slipping. Justice has a way of catching up." Sarah lowered her gaze, her fingers tracing the ultrasound photo. "I don't want revenge. I just want to live in peace with my child." Clara's voice softened. "Sometimes, child, peace only comes after truth is revealed. Your father left you strength, but life itself is about to hand you justice." At the same time, Judge Linda Howard received a sealed petition from Marcus. She read it carefully, her sharp eyes narrowing. "Freeze his assets immediately. If this is true, Benson's empire will not last the month." Back at the mansion, Michael poured himself a drink, laughing bitterly with Vanessa by his side. "Let them talk. I'm untouchable." Vanessa, however, hid a sly smile. She knew Victor Stone was tightening his grip. She leaned into Michael, whispering, "Yes, love, you're invincible." But in her heart, she was already preparing for the collapse. Mia Foster, watching Marcus from across the office, whispered with quiet awe, "You're not just exposing numbers. You're saving lives. If Sarah knew what we're uncovering..." Marcus gave a rare smile. "She'll know soon enough. The man who called her a burden is about to be stripped bare." That night, as Michael boasted at a lavish gala with Vanessa on his arm, detectives slipped quietly into his office, collecting documents. Marcus's voice rang in his memory. "Fraud doesn't stay buried. It always leaves a trail." Michael's collapse had begun, and when Vanessa turned her back at his lowest moment, the fall would be harder than he ever imagined. The breaking news alert flashed across every screen in the city. Michael Benson under fraud investigation, assets frozen. The gala ballroom, once filled with laughter and music, fell into stunned silence. Champagne glasses slipped from hands, shattering on marble floors. Investors pulled away from Michael like he was a plague. Camera flashes sparked like lightning. Michael's face drained of color as whispers roared through the hall. Fraud, frozen accounts, finished, man. Trevor Miles, his longtime business partner, stepped back coldly. "I can't sync with you, Michael. I have a family to feed. From today, we're done." His words cut deeper than a knife. Michael reached for Vanessa's hand. "Vanessa, tell them it's lies. Tell them we'll fight this." But Vanessa slipped her hand away, her smile tight and insincere. "Michael, I don't stand beside ruins." Michael's voice cracked. "Ruins? You said we were building an empire together." From the corner of the room, Victor Stone appeared, calm as ever, sipping his drink. His cold eyes locked on Michael as he leaned toward Vanessa. "I warned him. He wouldn't listen." Vanessa turned to Victor, her lips curving into a smile that made Michael's stomach churn. "Maybe I listened." The realization hit like a hammer. She had never been his salvation. She had been Victor's weapon. Michael staggered back, his voice trembling with fury. "You betrayed me! Both of you!" Vanessa laughed, low and cruel. "I didn't betray you, Michael. I just chose better. You gave me a stage, but Victor gives me security." The crowd murmured in shock, but no one stepped forward to defend Michael. The man who had once stood so tall now looked smaller than ever, stripped of wealth, dignity, and loyalty. His mother, Margaret, stormed into the ballroom, her silk robe dragging behind her. "Michael, what have you done? They're saying you'll be arrested. You've shamed this family." Michael tried to grab Vanessa's wrist, but she pulled away with disgust. "Don't touch me. I don't belong to losers." She turned to Victor, who offered his arm. Together they walked out of the gala, Vanessa not once glancing back. The cameras flashed wildly, recording every second. Headlines were already forming. "Mistress leaves fallen tycoon for rival." Michael's knees buckled, but pride held him upright. His eyes burned with fury, his lips twisting into a whisper only he could hear. "Sarah, she'll pay for this. Somehow, she'll pay." As Michael stumbled alone into the night, broken and betrayed, Detective Brian Scott stepped from the shadows with a badge in hand. His voice was sharp as steel. "Michael Benson, you're under investigation. Don't think you can run from this." The courtroom would soon become the stage, and Sarah, once mocked as weak, would rise before the world as Michael faced his final reckoning. The courtroom doors burst open as cameras flashed like lightning. Michael Benson, once a proud tycoon, now stumbled inside in handcuffs. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes sunken, his pride in tatters. Reporters shouted questions. "Michael, is it true you stole millions? Did Vanessa betray you for Victor Stone? Do you regret abandoning your pregnant wife?" Each question stabbed him deeper than the last. Judge Linda Howard, stern and commanding, struck her gavel. "Order in the court. This trial concerns fraud, embezzlement, and insurance scams linked to Michael Benson." Sarah Benson entered quietly, her steps steady, though her body was heavy with pregnancy. The crowd parted in silence. She wore no jewels, no expensive gown, only a simple pastel dress. Yet in that moment, she carried more dignity than Michael had ever known. Michael's eyes widened. For the first time in months, he saw her again. The woman he had called weak, the wife he had cast into the street, now stood tall, stronger than he remembered. His voice cracked as he whispered, "Sarah." But Sarah did not answer. She took her seat beside Clara Reed, her lawyer, and Anna Blake, the young law intern who had become like a sister. Harriet Cole sat in the gallery, her hands clasped in prayer. The trial began. Marcus Hale, the forensic accountant, stepped forward with his assistant Mia Foster. He laid out documents, receipts, and bank records, his voice sharp. Michael Benson diverted millions through shell accounts. He filed fraudulent claims. He bled his empire dry while parading wealth. Detective Brian Scott added, and when the empire fell, he sought to silence witnesses. But evidence does not lie. Every word carved into Michael's pride. His mother Margaret, sitting nearby, hid her face in shame. Finally, Judge Howard's voice thundered, "Michael Benson, your empire is finished. Your contracts are void. Your assets remain frozen pending further investigation." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Michael's legs gave way, and for the first time, his pride broke. He dropped to his knees right there before Sarah, his voice hoarse and desperate. "Sarah, please forgive me. I was blind. I was wrong. Take me back. We can start again. For the baby's sake." Gas filled the room. The same man who once shouted, "Get out of my house!" now knelt in public, begging the woman he had despised. Sarah's eyes glistened, but her voice was calm, steady. "Michael, you abandoned me when I had nothing. Now you beg when you have nothing. This child will know dignity, but not through your name." Michael reached for her hand, but Clara blocked him firmly. "Enough. She owes you nothing." Judge Howard struck the gavel. Court adjourned. As officers moved to escort Michael out, he clutched the floor, weeping. Reporters snapped pictures of his humiliation. Sarah rose gracefully, holding her ultrasound photo high, her strength shining before the world. The final chapter would not be about revenge, but about rebirth. Sarah's foundation, her new life, and her triumph over betrayal. The prison gates clanged shut behind Michael Benson, the sound echoing like a final judgment. His suit was gone, replaced with gray prison clothes. His eyes, once proud, were hollow now. Reporters outside shouted the headline to the world, From tycoon to beggar, Michael Benson jailed for fraud. The news spread like fire, and with it, his shame. Margaret Benson fainted on the steps. Unable to bear the disgrace, Vanessa Clark, already discarded by Victor Stone, was spotted at a bar begging Anthony Rivers, the wealthier doctor, to take her in, only to be laughed out of the room. The mistress who once flaunted her beauty now walked the streets mocked and forgotten. Meanwhile, in a quiet hall across town, Sarah Benson stood beneath a banner that read, New Dawn Foundation Launch. The foundation, created in her father's honor, would support abandoned mothers and children, women just like her, left behind yet still standing strong. The room was filled with neighbors, journalists, doctors, and community leaders. Harriet Cole stood proudly at her side, her hands folded like a mother watching her child grow. Anna Blake, her loyal law student friend, distributed brochures with radiant energy. Clara Reed, ever sharp and protective, managed the documents that made the foundation official. Even Dr. Samuel Wilson attended, his eyes warm with admiration. Sarah stepped to the podium. She wore a simple emerald dress, her hair tied back, her face glowing with dignity. The ultrasound photo of her unborn child rested in her hand, a symbol she refused to let go. Her voice trembled at first but grew stronger with each word. Months ago, I was called a burden. I was cast out of my home. I was told I was worthless. But my father, even in death, reminded me of the truth. Worth does not come from the world's opinion. It comes from within. Today, I stand not as a victim, but as a victor. This foundation is not just mine. It is for every woman who has been betrayed, humiliated, or left behind. You are not weak. You are not alone. The hall erupted in applause, people rising to their feet. Sarah's tears glistened, not of sorrow this time, but of triumph. As the applause faded, a commotion stirred at the back of the hall. Michael Benson, escorted by guards for one last public appearance before full sentencing was brought in. His eyes were red, his voice hoarse. He fell to his knees before Sarah in front of everyone. Sarah, please take me back. I have nothing. You're all I have left. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. The world waited for her reply. Sarah looked down at him, her hand resting gently on her belly. Her voice was calm, unshaken. Michael, you had me when I had nothing, and you threw me away. Now you beg when you have nothing. I forgive you, but I will never return to you. My future is with my child, and with the women who deserve dignity. The guards dragged him away as the crowd erupted again, this time not in pity, but in celebration of Sarah's strength. As Sarah raised the ultrasound photo high, the cameras flashed like stars around her. The community shouted her name, her foundation's banner glowing behind her, but in the back of her mind she whispered, Father, I hope I've made you proud. And though this chapter had closed, the world outside still waited for Sarah's child to be born, for her foundation to grow, and for the legacy of her rise to echo far beyond the walls of betrayal.